that, we have an exciting video today where we're gonna walk through my new 2023 reading journal setup together. This is now my second year of using a reading journal, so I feel a little bit more confident about it and also know a little bit better which pages I want to include in it and which I probably won't use that much. I'm actually using the same journal as last year because I still had a little bit over half of it left, so it should be fine for me for this year as well. This is the Thinker's Notepad by Page Anchor, and what initially drew me to this journal is the beautiful black leather cover. This journal has some pre-designed pages in the beginning, but I just ignored them and started to use the journal for where the empty dot grid pages started. But that's that, and now let's jump into the actual setup itself. And as the first thing, I wanted to clearly see where the new year starts. So I decided to create these yearly tabs on the side of my journal. I used a pretty sturdy craft paper for this, so it's gonna survive even if I hit the tab somewhere while moving the journal around. And I just wrote these vertical yearly numbers here with a pretty thick font, and then used double-sided tape to glue these into the journal. This Scotch double-sided tape is really strong in my opinion, so I always use it for stuff that would fall off with less sticky glue. I think these tabs ended up looking so cute, but now that that's out of the way, we can start with the actual 2023 cover page. The cover page doesn't really have any other purpose than just dividing these different years, and I thought it would be a great place also for some bigger pictures and a fun book-related quote as well. If you're new to my reading journal videos, the style I use in them is quite different from my typical bullet journal. I really enjoyed this scrapbooking style where I just print, cut and glue images instead of drawing much myself. Doing this requires a little bit of preparation, but then the actual setting process doesn't take that much time. I was a complete newbie to this style when I started my first reading journal a year ago, but I think I feel a little bit more confident with it now. Something I always like to use in these is some neutral colored craft papers or these scribble or text patterns. You could either print some for yourself from the internet, that's how I started last year, or if you really like the patterns I'm using in this video, most of them are available in my shop. It can also be very tempting to just keep adding decorations to the pages, and that has definitely happened to me quite a few times. So especially if this style is new to you, maybe try to start with some very simple pages with only a few colors or decoration elements. It helps me a lot to limit the decorations to a certain style or maybe collection, as you'll also see in this video. Pretty much each spread we'll set up will have some kind of theme to help me not get too overboard. I really like this quote that I found from the internet. It says, "You can't buy happiness, but you can buy books," and that's kind of the same thing. And it was just very cute and appropriate for a reading journal cover in my opinion. Anyway, I've also realized that I usually prefer these bulky serif titles in my reading journal because they add enough accent to stand out from the rest of the decorations. I still always sketch out all the titles beforehand with a pencil before writing them out with a black pen, just to make sure that the letters end up somewhat symmetrically to the space I had planned for them. But then I just decided to add some final decoration to this spread with these clear sticker sheets that are also from my own shop. I thought the style went well with these warm brown tones here. So after adding a few final touches here and there, we have the first cover spread ready and we can move on in this reading journal setup. So next we have a spread that was probably my favorite to use last year, so I definitely wanted to repeat it, and that would be a book log of all the books I'll read this year. But before we get more into that, I'll again start with some decorations here. And for this page, we're gonna use these absolutely stunning washi tapes from Notebook Therapy that they kindly sent to me. These are all from their Dark Academia washi tape collection, and I love how dark but still neutral these tapes are. So I decided to pair them with this lighter scribble pattern again that we're gonna add to the top and bottom edge of this page, and then we're gonna layer that with some of the washi tapes. My intention was to keep this spread fairly simple and leave a lot of room here in the middle because that's where all the book cover images will eventually go. They'll also add quite a lot of color to the final spread, so I thought it would be better to keep the decorations very neutral instead. The dark picture washi tape and the shiny film roll were my absolute favorites from this whole set. I also wanted to finish some of the empty spaces with a few stamps since I finally got around to buying one of these ink cushions, so I can finally use all my beautiful stamps moving forward. By the way, all the pens and other tools I'm using in this video will be listed in the description, so you can find all the details from there. But after all the decorations were done, I'll quickly explain how I'm about to use this spread. So I've printed out these small book cover images that I store in the back pocket of my journal, and after finishing reading a book, I add the cover here and write my score under it from 1 to 10. Six of Crows is the book I'm currently reading, so I just added in here to show you what it looks like. My overall reading goal this year is the same one I had last year, which is 24 books. Last year I only made it to 20, so this year I would really like to achieve this number. I think 2 books per month is a pretty realistic goal for me, and 24 also happens to perfectly line up with this spread design, so that's always great. Also, one of you asked me how I print the cover images, so I'll quickly explain that too. I download the cover images from Goodreads and then just add many of them at a time in a letter size sheet in Photoshop. You don't need to print these out on a sticker paper, a normal copy paper would work perfectly fine, but I do that to save some time when gluing the images. I also print all the images as double so that I can use the second image on the book review pages if I end up creating one from them. I usually add pretty much all the books from my reading list here, so I probably won't end up needing all of these, but at least I have them ready if I do. Also, you don't need Photoshop to do this. I think this could also be done in other programs like Office Word or even in Paint, I think. But that's all for that, and now let's move on again. This next spread is one that I'm probably the most excited about, but let's start with the decorations again before filling in the actual content here. We are first creating this big ribbed section to the top using black craft paper and these 2 pictures. And I wanted these to rip evenly, so I first glued the images to the black paper so that we could rip all of them together, if that makes any sense. Then I also wanted to add some shadow under this with this light gray brush pen to draw some extra attention to it. But after that, we're gonna take out another washi tape set from Notebook Therapy, and this is the Moonlit Alchemy set that I showed in my yearly bullet journal setup video. I think these and the Academia sets are made for a reading journal. They have exactly this dark vintage aesthetic that I really enjoy using, and we are gonna use quite a few tapes here on this spread. I also have a pretty large selection of these random pictures I've just printed out from the internet. I have most of them on my Pinterest in my reading journal inspiration board, and then I just usually try to choose some pictures that match with the other decorations. Something I've also realized is that I tend to print out too big images, so I advise you to keep them pretty small. There often isn't that much space on the pages if you're planning to write something in the middle, so small pictures are very useful. But then finally, when the decorations are pretty much done, we can start with the content of this first spread. So I wanted this to be a reading bingo. So we are first creating this 5x5 square grid where each of the squares is 4x4 dot rows wide. I glued this on top of the decorations to bring a little bit more attention to it again, and then before filling it out, I forgot to add this quote thing to the top corner I wanted to add. These quote stickers are from Ikigai Papir, which is a shop run by Heda from Mochi Bujo here on YouTube, and I absolutely love these quote stickers. It's always so difficult to choose which one I want to use because they are all so fun. But after that, I wrote a quick title to this page again. We're actually going to switch out the color of the bingo title here at the end. One of my goals this year is to expand my reading genres a little bit, and I thought this kind of bingo would be a fun way to track that. By the way, I hope I didn't unconsciously steal this idea from anyone else. If I did, please let me know in the comments. But anyway, I added some fun tropes or book genres here, and once I read a book that fits a square, I can cross it out normal bingo style. I'll show a clearer image of the squares on the screen in case you want to copy this for yourself, and you could always switch out any that don't necessarily fit your reading style. For me, pure fantasy and pure sci-fi means that the genre is those first and foremost, and not fantasy or sci-fi romance necessarily, where the romance aspect is the biggest part of the plot. Then LGBTQ+ could either mean reading a book with a main character belonging to this community, or reading something from a writer from the LGBTQ+ community, or you could of course decide that you have to do both to cross this one off. Then, since I mainly read books written by female authors with a female main character, I thought giving men a chance as well might be a good challenge. But yeah, I'm very excited about this. I think I'll have so much fun trying to cross this out throughout the year. Then the next page is one that I also had last year, but this will be an updated version of it. So I wanted to have a place to list all the books that are coming out this year. Another promise I've made to myself is to only start new book series that have been finished, or if the last book is coming out within a few months, that's acceptable as well. There are of course some exceptions, for example some crime mystery series where the books feel more standalone-ish, so you won't necessarily need to read them back to back, but in general I think I'll try to stick with this rule this year. So I'll write the title of the book or the series here, then which number of the series the book is, and lastly the date when it will be released. But yeah, as I mentioned, I lastly just switched the title color here, but after that we're finally done with this spread. We still have 2 more to go, so let's flip over to the next one. This next spread will be my updated and narrowed down yearly to be read list that I hope I'll end up using a little bit more than last year. In this spread, I decided to use this Petals and Parchment washi tape collection, which is one that I designed for the washi tape shop last year. It's probably my favorite collection I've designed for them, so I wanted to get an excuse to use it again in my reading journal. And we are starting with these outer edge decorations again that we'll end up partly covering with 2 lighter boxes in the middle of the pages. Again, I added some pictures on this spread that I thought matched the color of the tapes, and I really wanted to go for something slightly lighter and more fresh than in the previous pages. I've also printed out these grid papers because I don't happen to own a single notebook with a regular grid like this, and I thought it looked really pretty against the other decorations. But then after the decorations and titles are done, I'll quickly fill in these lists in case some of you want to see what I'm mainly planning to read this year. I have more books listed on my Goodreads profile, so if you use it as well and want to see some more up-to-date updates, feel free to follow me or add me as a friend over there. But I also wanted to write out this very narrowed down list as well. Romance is my biggest category here, even though some of these books overlap with multiple categories, so I just threw them in one that I thought would suit them the best. Compared to last year, I have way more standalone books, and I also tried to find some duologies because I've had a little bit hard time staying excited about a longer series these days. I'll still probably try to read a few this year, but the plot needs to be very exciting for me to keep going after maybe 2 or 3 books, and sometimes even after the first one. Also, especially when it comes to romance, I tend to prefer the new adult genre over the young adult, just because I feel like it fits my age and life a little bit better to read about a slightly older character and more mature, hopefully spicy love story, I guess. If you have any recommendations, I'm all ears for them. Last year, almost all the books I read were from your recommendations, and I'm so excited to hear what are your favorites and what you're currently reading, so leave all of those in the comments. I also listed a few non-fiction books here, but I'm not a big non-fiction reader these days, so we'll see if I can get through even one of these. And then the last 2 categories are thriller or mystery, and then we have the fantasy, sci-fi, and the other category, which are basically just books I couldn't necessarily fit into the first 2. As much as I love my romance books, I wanna get into some more pure fantasy and sci-fi this year, just because I feel like there are so many more books with a higher writing quality in these categories, and that's something I often start to crave for after reading books where the romance storyline pretty much carries all the rest. I also have a few classics here that I've never read for some reason, like Lord of the Flies, that I never had to read at school, but which I would be really interested to read now that I'm a little bit older. But I guess that's enough about my to-be read list. I'm pretty sure this will change throughout the year, but at least for now, I'm pretty satisfied with it. Also, let me know if we have same books on our TBR list this year. But then we have one last spread to set up, which will be the first quarter cover spread. I used this quarterly method to separate the books I read also last year, and it worked very well for me in terms of the number of books, and I think it's also a good time frame to have this kind of video update where we can chat about a few books and set up a new cover together. On this spread, I wanted to create something a little bit more wintry, so I ended up using some products from my own shop winter collection that's still available and is actually on sale till January 8. However, you could also find very similar pictures on the internet, so no need to use my products. I just happen to have some leftovers lying around that I thought I would use. But anyway, I went with some cozy grayish brown tones here and combined it with some whites, light blue and blue green shades to create this very cozy wintry aesthetic. I like to use these quarterly covers to add an even smaller TBR ideas list where I can list just a few different books that I feel like I would enjoy reading in this season or I just generally feel interested in. As I mentioned earlier, I'm currently reading The Six of Crows and I'll continue with the second book in the series next, but after that I might pick up a quick murder mystery and then maybe start a more romance-heavy adventure like The Tides of Fate, which I found from Goodreads when looking for pirate books, or Monster in His Eyes, which seems to be a more contemporary romance. Many people said that this is their favorite series, so I wanted to give it a go since I haven't had the best luck with books in this specific category. Then something I also wanted to add to these cover pages is type of short reflection or reading stats section. I missed something like this in my last year's reading journal and I thought it'd be fun to be able to compare different seasons and also see some stuff like how many pages I ended up reading in total. But then after these cover pages, I'll start setting up the independent book review spreads that are all usually a little bit different from each other. You can check out my 2022 reading journal flip through video if you're interested to see more of how I tend to use them and set them up. But I guess that's finally it for this 2023 reading journal setup. I really hope you got some new ideas for your own journals, and if you'd like to stay tuned for more journaling and book reviews, definitely consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!